politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware. What's up, everybody, and welcome to RaceAware, the podcast all about American race history and its overall impact on the lives of the marginalized. I'm Dr. Elise Richey, coming to you with my co-hosts Tony Szynski and Dan Sauber. Let's get started.
How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing great. What about you?
I'm doing great too. This segment is going to be a rough conversation for all three of us, I believe. As a man of a certain age, I fought tooth and nail against the use of stereotypes, and yet here we are still discussing it. The sad part is, if we ignore uncomfortable topics, we give them more room to grow. So I'm going to ease into the discussion by giving a few facts that we may not be aware of. Then, in the second segment, we'll discuss some of those stereotypes that my fellow hosts and myself may have personally experienced. First off, what is an ethnic or racial stereotype? It involves part of a system of beliefs about typical characteristics of members of a given ethnic or nationality and their status and cultural norms. This stereotype goes back decades. In the 19th century, a children's book was discovered, and it used stereotypes to encourage children to be better by comparison. Some examples of the uses they used in comparative stereotypes for the kids was the Dutch are an industrious race, and Chinese children are very obedient to their parents. It was almost like they were using reverse psychology by using the stereotype to compare. They believed that it encouraged the children to be better. In the same vein, an article written by the British print newspaper The Guardian, titled European Stereotypes, What Do You Think of Each Other and Are We Right?, unearthed scathing stereotypes about each other in Western Europe. The only exception was the country of Germany, where the stereotypes were very complimentary. The stereotypes described the German people as uber efficient and diligent and disciplined. Unfortunately, when the study came out, the other Western European countries felt slighted. Therefore, it caused them to do better, or at least that's what we were told. However, most of the stereotypes that we learn about and hear about today, whether in passing or in the form of jokes, are not meant to be encouraging. It's meant to be demeaning and destroy people's self-worth. So what do you all think about what I just said?
I find it interesting that The Guardian did that study about European countries and how they kind of played up Germany as being industrious, on point, whatever, and then kind of slurred the other countries. Was this done to as an example of how stereotyping is bad or good, or was this done with another specific target in mind?
Well, I think that the study was done by The Guardian because the countries that they described and the stereotypes themselves were pretty harsh. I didn't include them in the story because I thought they were really awful and really didn't care to repeat most of them. But, the British were seen as dirty and self-serving, and the French were seen as literal as cowards, and the Italians were seen as mama's boys. That's exactly the words they used. And the only country that had any complimentary results at all was Germany.
Wow. I was just thinking that it's not a good method, but it did yield some results, right?
Right.
The only difference is that when you do it on a big scale like that, it could probably cause bigger problems like wars. But when it's done on a smaller scale, when I say smaller, that's relative, when it's individuals that you stereotype against, it can have a more lasting impact. So, because right now, I'm pretty sure very few, if nobody, has heard about these country stereotypes that you mentioned.
Right.
So it served a purpose. It was a propaganda that they did probably to motivate their people. But my question is, why is it necessary to demean another group, another country, in order for you to raise yourself up?
I totally agree. I totally agree.
I will say this: I did find it amusing. Under the Spanish category, they basically listed them as drunks, and Spain's response back was, "Oh, that's just us on holiday."
I believe they said that they were prone to only siestas and fiestas.
Yes.
I mean,
What's wrong with that?
oh, they didn't care for it.
Yeah, but really, it's kind of true. I mean, they're looking at it because Germany said it in a negative way, okay? So they took it in a negative way. But isn't that what they use in advertising to get people for tourists to come to Spain,
Right.
So it's funny, Tony just brought this up. It's very interesting because I guess it's not only the phrase, but it's also how it's delivered that makes an impact.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree because they try to present it as a study, and at first it came off as that, but when I started reading the descriptions of each country, it didn't come off that way at all. It almost came off as a slap in the face.
For each of the other countries.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting, as an American who's traveled to Europe a number of times, it was shocking to me that no matter what country I was in, right at our lunchtime, everything closed down. They all took their afternoon break. They reopened up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, business back to normal. So it was shocking for me to say, well, why are they closing between 12:30 and 2:30? It makes no sense. But actually, after you live there for a while, it makes perfect sense.
Well, the thing is, it's like we're the only country that's like a chain gang, workhorse mentality. And I don't think that we're getting further ahead any faster. All we're doing is burning out our people. That whole thing with the, fiesta and siesta, that's lifestyle. Okay, that's a lifestyle phrase to me. Like you said, most countries respect the boundaries between work and lifestyle.
Well, I know. I have a friend who lives in Austria, and when she became pregnant and delivered the child, not only did she get maternity leave, her husband got paternity leave, fully paid for. They got benefits for having a child, so they got, actually the government gave them gifts, as in strollers and car seats and diapers. And I mean, it was like, wow, it'd be nice if we did that over here.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we don't do these things over here because some people categorize that kind of benefit as socialism.
Ooh, the dreaded S word.
the dreaded word. And it's not socialism because one of the things I like that the new administration coined a phrase for is life infrastructure.
I like that.
Yes, because you don't just need concrete infrastructures like roads to get to work. you're not going to use the road to get to work if you don't have childcare.
Right.
Right? So there's certain things that we need to make sure that people have access to in order for them to be able to use the roads to go to work, like health care, make sure that they're healthy, make sure that there's child care involved, make sure that there's whatever it is that people generally need to make sure that people can participate in going to work, making it to work. So infrastructure is not just the hardcore things like building bridges. Of course, that's standard infrastructure. But then there are other things like there probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm pretty sure it's more than we think there is, of people that do not even have Wi-Fi. And now with the pandemic, we're on the back end of the pandemic, we have companies, a lot of companies are going to be reassigning their workers to work from home, whether it's part-time, full-time, because it can be done. It can be done. So if you're working somewhere where some people have to drive over an hour to get to work, but when they go back to their rural homes, they don't have Wi-Fi, they can't participate in working from home because it's not because they can't afford it and they're not buying and not subscribing to it, it's because it's not even available.
Well, when I lived in New Jersey, it was very common for people to leave their house in the morning, go to the train station, get on the train, and get off in Manhattan an hour and a half later. That's 3 hours commuting every single day.
Yeah, that's
I'm sure after COVID and the pandemic, with people working at home, there's going to be a shift.
Yeah, there's going to be a shift. All right.
Well, I think the thing that I took away from the study in Europe was what we feel with the type of stereotyping that we're going to get into in the next segment is that they're all like that. And that's what they took umbrage with, is all Italians are like this. All people from Spain are like this, because it's not that way.
Well, that's what stereotypes are. When you say a statement and you blanket apply it to everyone within the group that you're speaking of.
Yep. And that's the one thing that we need to break away from. In the next segment, my fellow hosts and I are going to discuss the stereotypes that we personally have experienced ourselves. So stand by and come back, and we will see you after the break.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/RaceAware.
Hi, welcome back. In this segment, we will discuss the type of stereotyping that most of us are used to hearing. Stereotypes that aren't meant to challenge us, but demean us. Not to raise us up, but to tear us down. Remember, the stereotypes cross all races and economic status. Who would like to share their experience first?
I'll go first. I think I was about 5 years old the first time I was called a sissy. And didn't even quite know what that was at the time. I just knew it was bad. And
what, you knew it was bad, excuse me, Tony. You knew it was bad, why? Because of the
tone.
Because of the tone.
Because of the tone. It was, you could tell, I mean, I didn't even know what the word demeaning was, but I knew it was demeaning. You just, kids have this innate sense like, oh, that's not right. I need to be different. Need to try and fit in more. So Then I was not invited to play stickball or kickball with the boys. And it just kind of built and built and built. Then you get into school, and it just multiplies. And queer followed, faggot followed, and of course my last name, she, he. It just went. People went crazy with it. So it was a pretty rough time. Then my dad, being an ex-Marine, who wanted a more butch son, who wanted to play ball, but I had no interest in sports, even though he never came out and said it, I knew there was major disappointment on his side.
Mm.
Did the way you were treated, did that change your feelings and your attitudes in school? And I mean, I can't imagine being treated that way and going into a class every single day knowing people felt that way about me.
The change it made for me was I needed to make sure I always maintained an A average. I never wanted to get less than a 95. I wanted to excel in school to show them off. And, of course, that just brings more difficulties your way with other students. You're always being a too good person. You're always kissing up to the teacher. But that was my way of getting around it. And the fact that I kind of accepted this is who I am, and I could double Dutch with the best of them. I wanted an easy bake oven. Screw it, I knew who I was.
How about you, Ral?
Well, me, you know, like I told you before, I think from many shows ago, I'm not, and I've never been the kind of person that is overly sensitive as to what, even as a child, I intrinsically knew that was your problem, okay, which I'm lucky about that, because the first stereotype that I remember, I think, was probably, I was an adult, okay, and it was in a work environment, and over time, they found out, or, you know, through discussion, maybe it was a vacation that I took or something like that, they found out that I was Haitian. And, of course, the first thing was to ask me about the voodoo.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So, you know, I don't think I was shocked. I was more like, what the hell? You know what I mean? But what I did was so friggin' mean, but I did it, right? I played it up. I said, yeah, you know, when I was over there, we did some spells.
I can so see her doing that.
To make sure that whoever bothers me, right, gets their comeuppance.
Did you have a doll on your desk of your supervisor?
No, I didn't do it. I didn't go that far. But I'll tell you, people, they really believe in the stereotype because they were on their P's and Q's around me.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That really is.
It really is.
Like, I have like a little bit of a comedic way about me, you know, and I just felt like that was such a stupid question that I played up on it. But the results were good.
And you know, it's interesting. So when I had my restaurant in New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have to hire kitchen staff,
Uh-huh.
hands down, across the board, the hardest working people I've ever had in my restaurant were Haitian women.
Really?
Hands down.
Yeah. Haitian women know how to put their head in the work and get it done.
They work
I'm not saying-
120%.
Now, I'm not doing like Germany. I'm not saying that Haitian women are the only ones that do it, but I'm Haitian, and I know a lot of Haitian women, and I know myself, and I could say that I agree with you. Tony, but that's not to say that other women of other races and other countries don't do the same thing.
Oh, and I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying of the women that I did hire to work in the restaurant that were Haitian, by far, they were the hardest working people we ever hired.
Right. And the other one, I happen to have too, if Dan will allow it.
Sure.
Now, the second one was earlier, but I didn't realize it until I was grown. I was an adult. Is that hypersexualization of the black woman?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, and I could tell you it makes you feel very uncomfortable, because even before you understand the sexuality, you feel uncomfortable, and you don't know why. And it's because one of the stereotypes is that black women are supposed to be hypersexual, really good sexually, okay? And some of the exotic features people hone in on, Right. So with me, I think it was mostly my lips. Until this day, it's still a problem. I even told my family I'm going to get a lip reduction.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
It's interesting that you use the word exotic, because when I hear that word, I'm immediately thinking about fetishization of different races.
Right.
So I know in the gay community, black men are fetishized. Certain target audiences also fetish Asians. And it's like I don't quite get that. I had a friend over many years ago, and you've been over here. Well, I've got different artwork of some male nudes. And I can remember one of my female friends came and she says, "I didn't know you were into black guys because I have a nude black man." And I'm like, "No, I'm into men. I don't care what they are. If they're hot, they're hot." I mean, just because I have a picture of a naked black man does not mean I'm into black men. It's a hot man.
Fetishes. Yeah, those are preferences. But you don't go around making hot black men feel uncomfortable.
I hope not.
By focusing on one body part or another.
Right.
Right. Well, what I found interesting, Will, is, the stereotypes that it would be nice would be positive. Like you were talking about Haitian women being hardworking.
Right.
Why can't those be stereotypes? Why do they always have to be the negative?
You're asking me. I didn't make the negative ones up.
Yeah,
so.
I know.
I don't know. I don't understand why. That was my question from the first segment. I don't understand why people need to downgrade other people in order to upgrade themselves. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, with me, it wasn't. Mine was more socioeconomic. Mm-hmm. My father was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. We lived in a small town. So the minute they heard our name, we were trash. It didn't matter how we did in school. It didn't matter how hardworking we were. The minute you heard our name, you must be trash. And the first time...
I'm going to have to go back, Dan. I don't understand how your name... Because that's specific. Mm-hmm. Is it a stereotype for people in your area that has that kind of name? Is it because of your nation of origin? I don't understand, because it's not a stereotype if it's...
Where I grew up in the Midwest, mm-hmm. every town had a specific area that you lived in. Like if you lived on South Main Street, they looked at you differently. If you lived on Maple Street, where I lived, they looked at you differently.
But how does your name tell them that you lived on?
Well, because it was a small town, people knew your name.
I see.
Right. It's like the first time I realized it was when I was walking home with my friend I was in junior high, and we stopped at his house, and I stayed outside, and he went in to ask if he could come over to my house to play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his mom didn't know I was standing there. And she said, I thought I told you I didn't want you running around with that kind of trash. And I'm like, wait a minute. How did it get to be trash? Where'd that come from?
Did you look behind you to see if
Yeah, I'm like, what are you talking about? But then I found out later, talking to my older brother and sister, that seems to be the way it works.
Wow.
It sounds like it's the sins of the father.
Yeah. And his brothers. So.
Oh, God. That's crazy.
It's interesting, though, how stereotypes can change from one area to another. Like living in a big city or living in a small city where everybody knows who you are and they know you by name. Sometimes it can come down to family because they do know your name.
The name thing kills me, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they knew. I could tell you right now, I could rattle off a half a dozen names that were up in the upper echelon of where I lived simply by their name.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. So I wanted to look at how also stereotypes impact different arenas, like the stereotype of the magical Negro.
Mm.
Especially you see that in the entertainment, where you'll have a Negro person, or it's usually a man, okay, that's brought into a white person's life in order to better that white person's life. A perfect example that comes to mind for me is, remember the Green Mile?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this magical man couldn't fix his life, but he could fix the Tom Hanks character life.
Right.
You have any other examples like that? It doesn't have to be in entertainment. It could be in other. You know, for me, I have more like African American type examples.
You know, I just go back to that thing that Muhammad Ali had done on an interview where he talked about the word black and the word white, and how everything that's associated with the word white is really good, everything associated with the word black is really bad. And the one that cracked me up was angel food cake, devil's food cake. I mean, blackmail. I mean, it was like, wow, you grow up with these phrases, you think nothing about them, but put them all together and go, well, that's pretty damning right there.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of these stereotypes and the way that the system was the foundation of the system. You know, the foundation of the system was to set up a hierarchy that would benefit the people who are making the system.
And it's funny how stereotypes can work both ways. Think of Asian women. What are the two stereotypes you hear about Asian women? Well, they're submissive, or they're a tiger mom. And no, they are women and they run the gamut just like any other woman. You can't pigeonhole anybody, but you have those two stereotypes right there.
You know what, this whole thing with the tiger mom, there are tiger moms across the board.
Everywhere.
But I can tell you this, there's probably more tiger moms in immigrant families than American families.
Yes.
Okay? Because immigrant families come with a different set of priorities. What you call a tiger mom is really, in our culture, a mom of discipline. A mom of structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tiger mom.
Right. I'm trying to remember that phrase they used to use on, oh, what show was it? Anyhow, it was, if your kid gets out of line, call 1-800-BLACK-MAMA or something like that. Because
is it Black Mama or Big Mama?
Yeah, or something like that. They believed that the black mother was loving, but to a fault. You know, don't mess with a black mama. It was like, you know, how many times they talk about kids on TV, and usually white kids that are acting outrageously or whatever, and you'll hear somebody ultimately say they need to take a visit to a black mama because that. And when I hear that, it's like, well, not all black women are like that, though. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in comedy, I've also seen Filipino comedians talk about how their mom had impeccable aim with a flip-flop or a wooden spoon.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The Spanish moms have impeccable aim.
Yes, they do. They all do.
The African moms have impeccable aim. You know. So, look, that's a cultural thing. That's not a stereotype. It just so happens to be that's a cultural thing that some people do and some people don't. It's not everybody that has that impeccable aim, you know?
Well, all I know is that all I had to do was act up one time, and I never acted up again because they would have beat me in public.
Mm.
I got beat in a store because I was acting like a fool, and I think I was like 4 or 5 years old. I never did that again.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, Mom. Oh, yeah.
So
she was good with a hand, a belt, a spatula, a spoon.
So is she a white tiger mom?
That's not the word I would have used.
It's just so, stereotypes are just so ridiculous, and they're so damaging. They're not only damaging on the whole, because now you'll have a whole society making decisions based on these inaccuracies, but they're also internally damaging to the people that they target.
Right. I totally agree.
Especially when you're a child hearing this over and over and over again. I know how damaging it was to me with my thing. I can't imagine how every other kid gets damaged with what they're hearing.
Right, and it's not just hearing it, because the belief fosters behavior that reinforces those stereotypes.
Right.
Okay, so being asked out on a date because they think that you're going to be something in the bedroom, you know what I mean, rather than wanting to get to know you as a person.
Right.
All right? Not wanting their children to play with you or date you because you're from the wrong side of the tracks, you know, based on, you know, your zip code or your name. You know what I mean?
Right.
Saying or treating a person as if they don't have any feelings by constantly name calling because they just happen to be gay, you treat them differently, you know, and that's the thing that you were saying, Tony, that you just focus elsewhere. Okay, so now you understand what I mean by I was focusing elsewhere before any of this stuff hit me. So all this stuff that came my way, they just really kind of went over my head for the majority of my formative years.
Right.
To me, whatever that was, that's your problem. That's not mine. And that's why I say that I'm lucky that I didn't have that to deal with ongoing. But when you finally have to deal with it, you're in a different level of maturity. So I know I took it very logically. So I dealt with it with humor, and the humor was not at my expense. I'll tell you that. Because if you're going to open up that can, I'm going to shove it down your throat. And I dealt with it with basically a lot of it I dealt with by not giving it any importance. So you're just talking to yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in New York City, and I'm sure it's not this way today, but back then, the neighborhoods were very focused on your origin. So you had your Italian neighborhood, your Jewish neighborhood, your Polish neighborhood. Where I grew up, it was kind of a convergence of Italians, Jews, and Poles.
Mm-hmm.
So I was exposed to Jewish families, Italian families, and the one stereotype that I would take away from where I was when I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
all they did was want to feed me. It was always, oh, sit down, eat. You've got to eat. It didn't matter who it was.
That's definitely the feeding trifecta right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I never thought of Italians as all being mobsters because, no, you got to eat some pasta. Or if I went to my Jewish friend's house, I never thought of them being cheap because they were always making me eat, brisket or corned beef. And it was crazy. It was eat, eat, eat.
Well, it's a good thing that you didn't have the Haitian community there because you'd definitely be on the 700-pound reality show.
Actually, I wish there had been. I love food.
Well, I think that's probably why they did that to you, because you were kind of skinny from the pictures
I was very skinny.
Everybody wants you to eat.
I never had that
But again, there's so many good things to say about different cultures, different sects in cultures of people. I still don't understand if anybody out there knows why, aside from the obvious reasons, to derail, demean, but why would somebody feel that that's the easiest way to get along, quote unquote, with people?
Right.
I don't know if it's ignorance, if it's fear, if it's just this wanting to one-up somebody else. But
well, maybe it's a combination of things. It could be fear. So with fear, you want to control that thing.
True.
Right.
Or take the power away that you think that the thing has.
All right. Well, in psychology, there's something called leveling.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel threatened or you feel somebody is better than you, many times people will say or do something that degrades that person they think is bringing them down a notch. It's called leveling. And I see stereotyping as being the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. We know why they're doing it for that purpose, to level or to raise themselves, right? So when they level you, then to them, they've raised themselves. But my question is not what we know already is the answer, but I just don't understand why is that easier than for you to just respect the fact that that person or that group of people have their talents, their culture, their contributions, and you have yours. The more that we all respect the contributions and the differences that we bring to the table, the more we all have as a collective.
Right. I totally agree. Totally.
And I know it's not lost on me, and this is not perhaps germane to the conversation we're having, but yesterday, June 12th, was the anniversary of the Supreme Court handing down the interracial marriage decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, 1967?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
So we've been having these issues. I mean, I can't believe that's in my lifetime. I mean, who would even think that? It just seems absurd.
Yeah.
That happened in 1967. By the way, another stereotype on Haitian women is they're very bossy. Look it up.
Don't cut that out. Don't cut that out.
I don't know what you're talking about.
For the record, Will is my sister from a different mother. I love her to death.
You got to get the work done.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we probably should take our last break. And we will be right back with some closing remarks.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/RaceAware.
Welcome back, folks. We are going to end the discussion by some closing remarks from each of our hosts. Tony, what do you think?
I think we need to sit down and have dinner with as many people as we possibly can. I still swear, food is the best leveler and the best way to get to know people. And you get some good food in your mouth, I don't care who is cooking, you're going to fall in love with that person.
You really were raised in that neighborhood, weren't you?
I was. I was.
Okay, for me, I think that my final word is that we need to find a way to educate people about how malicious and damaging and inaccurate those stereotypes are, and to find a way to dispel them. Tony's example is perfect if people would actually get on board.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I agree.
You know, as a quick aside, growing up being called all those horrible names, I became out at 16, never looked back, never gave it a second thought. My last job at the hospital, I was blown away by how many people expressed surprise when they found out I was gay. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, how could you not miss the fact that I'm not gay? I don't hide anything. But anyway, it just always throws me for a loop.
I think my closing remark would be something I learned from Will today. And that is, stereotypes don't always have to be bad. And I think what I'm going to try to do from now on is when people bring this subject up, is I'm going to start looking at all the wonderful things that a particular race or nationality brings to the table, instead of all this the damn negative stuff that we hear all the time. Make a stereotype a good thing. How's that?
Well, Dan, I'm so glad I made an impact on one person.
Oh, you do to me every time we meet.
Oh, that's so cool.
All right. Well, everybody, I hope we brought you something to think about. And I know I've learned a lot. And we will see you the next time around. It's time for our supporter shout out. Our latest supporter is Irish in Florida. Thank you so much for coming in and supporting our podcast.
We want to thank you guys for spending this time with us on RaceAware. As always, if you found the podcast valuable, please subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about it. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about next. Remember to visit our website. Our website is raceaware.rocks. Until next time, stay safe, informed, and race aware, because truth matters.
Politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware. We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/